We started working on this game around December last year. I already made a few posts on Twitter, but we decided to share the development progress in form of a devlog series. Hi, I'm Chris.
And my name is Oscar.
First of all, we needed a concept. Something simple that two of us can manage, especially since Oscar is still new to game development and I'm the only one who can write code and make 3D models.
That's right, I haven't really programmed, but back in the day I made maps for Duke Nukem 3D, Half-Life and Thief the Dark project, so I am familiar with level scripting and used level editors before. I also did audio work for a living, so I can manage voiceovers and sound effects as well.
One thing was sure, I will do everything related to graphics and gameplay mechanics. We choose to use Unreal Engine 5, because I am working with it since 2019. The first thing we had to figure out was how the game should look. We needed something simple, because I did not want to spend weeks on just 3D modeling.
Since we wanted a simple look and both of us like retro FPS games, we decided to base the game on a mix of classics like Wolfenstein 3D, Rise of the Triad and System Shock. A blocky, grid-based look would allow us to create simple, reusable level geometry.
So with the concept in hand, we started planning out the rest of the game. We will use classic FPS mechanics, with unlimited weapon slots and no reloading. We will also have weapon upgrades, multiple enemy types, episode-based progression with about 10 levels per episode, non-linear levels with secret places, and quick saving and quick loading functionality. The first thing I started working on was a visual concept. I made a few textures in GIMP and created a test scene in Blender. I felt like we were on a good track, but something was off. The textures did not have a very appealing color concept, so I went to lowspec.com to find a good color palette. We chose the old Z64 color palette by Jacoba. I remade the textures with a decreased resolution of 64x64 to match Wolfenstein 3D's texture size. Then I opened Unreal and created a blank blueprint-only project with no starter content. I choose blueprint only for now, so Oscar don't have to install Visual Studio and deal with my C++ crap. I imported the level pieces from Blender and created a new master material. This material is nothing special, it's set to unlit and I only use the emissive color. I turned off specularity and disabled roughness since we don't need them. I disabled texture filtering, compression and meep maps on the texture assets so they have the look we want. For now it looks super flat and depth perception is non-existent. Wolfenstein 3D solved this issue by using a darker version of the same texture on one axis, so I went back to the shader to do some magic. I used the vertex normal to mask off the x-axis to darken the texture in one direction. It worked. On the flat walls at least. On slopes it looked like shit. I tried to improve it by making the darkening on the slope lighter, but it did not work. I knew I had to scrap this idea, so I went back to the shader and set it back to default lit. I was about to place some lights in the test scene when I realized I did not make any textures for them, so I went back to GIMP to draw some ceiling lights. Then an idea hit me. What if I make a black and white mask for the parts supposed to light up? Well, I drew the mask and went back to the shader to implement emissiveness. After this, a happy little accident happened. I did not touch any post-process settings until this point, so Lumen, Unreal's ray tracer, was still active, and it looked awesome. Originally, I wanted to replicate the look of old Raycaster engines, but then we liked this look more, so we went with it. Okay. I know Lumen and ray tracing is performance intensive and not everyone has a rig to run it, so the final game will ship with DirectX 11 and standard lighting as well as DirectX 12 and hardware ray tracing support. And even with DirectX 12 you will be able to turn it off, but during the development we will only use the emissive materials as light sources, so we don't have to deal with light baking. I also changed the default project settings like color space, exposure, sent motion blur to hell, and changed the upscaling settings to use native resolution. So with the visual style dialed in, I started working on the player character by setting up basic FPS controls. It went quick, then I looked at the notes what else the player character will need and Oh crap, it was still December, so I had plenty of time. In a few days I implemented double jumping, dashing, swimming, fall damage, which we later scrapped, health and armor system, pickups, a basic weapon system, an inventory for key items, and an interaction system, switches, jump pads, doors, elevators, breakable stuff, an in-editor scripting system, and a deadly laser. I recently added kinetic damage to the player so you can fall and fly through glass. It's fun to play around with it. Almost as fun as this physics chair. So satisfying. This is why game development takes ages. But the thing I'm most proud of has to be my interaction system. I created a master blueprint actor and a blueprint interface. The master actor has every common function like enabling and disabling interaction, receiving and sending interaction signals, and calculating these debug connection arrows between each other. Every interactable object you see here is inherited from this master blueprint, yet they do different things. How can that be? Well, let me show you. After the master blueprint receives the interacted signal through the interface, it fires an empty event. Inside the child blueprint, I overwrite this empty event with the code and function I need. This is a really simple and flexible interaction system that requires no coding. You only have to connect nodes in the level editor. I sent over the project files to Oscar so he can start working on level design.
As soon as I received the project files, I started working on the levels. The grid-based kit we are using fit together like Legos, making it a breeze to assemble rooms of any shape or size. Within less than 2 months, I managed to construct a few of levels. While the texture work is still work in progress, and there are currently no props, enemies or pickups, the basic structure of the levels is coming together. Building just a level shell first and then adding mechanics later is actually more efficient. This phase of level design is known as the blockout, usually made out of boxes and other simple shapes to represent the basic shape and layout of the level. This allows for early playtesting and modifications before these placeholders are replaced with the final models. However, in our case, we don't need a traditional blockout because we are adapting a retro blocky style, and we plan to texture the flat shapes directly.
And this is where we are now. Well, I hope our rambling was enjoyable. Consider subscribing if you are interested in our game and in game development in general. I have plans for more videos. I just started working on the AI, so the next episode is probably going to be about that. Well, we see how it goes. But until then, see you in the next one.